Real life parenting from the heart.
I'm excited to welcome you on behalf of the Family Wellness Ministry and the Office of Youth and Young Adult Ministries of the Metropolis of San Francisco. And this segment is entitled Raising Kids with Emotional Intelligence, Parenting Styles That Make a Difference. We are reminded of the words of St. Isaac the Syrian that self-reflecting on how we show up to our relationships is a calling to the Orthodox Christian, especially the relationships within our families. St. Isaac writes, "To see ourselves as we really are is a miracle greater than raising the dead." Wow. Let's get ready to self-reflect.
As the Metropolis Director of Youth and Young Adult Ministries, it is my joy to partner with the Metropolis Family Wellness Team. They continue to integrate sensible, evidence-based psychology with a foundation of the Orthodox Christian worldview. Before we unpack our parenting topic, we want to imagine hearing the echo of Christ's words when he said in John 13:30, "I give you a new commandment, that you love one another, as I have loved you." His new commandment is to love in a certain way, in a certain style. So as we reflect on our parenting tonight, let's consider how we experience the love of Christ, and how is this love reflected in our parenting style.
Go ahead. So our focus in this segment is to center not only the importance of the impact of our parenting styles, which we'll be unpacking in a few moments, but we want to look at the research about the term emotional intelligence, sometimes referred to as EQ. Before discovering our kids' emotional intelligence, it might be a good idea to ask ourselves a question: what's our own parenting EQ? Let's see what the research says.
As Father Tom mentioned, not only will we be looking at our parenting styles and the impact it has on the emotional life of our kids, but also this idea of emotional intelligence. And he posed the question, what is your emotional intelligence? Research really takes us to that whole idea of how we show up emotionally, how much awareness we have emotionally will impact how our parenting goes, and in fact, determine what kind of style we have, and will help develop or not the emotional intelligence of our children. In other words, home life is the emotional classroom, and whatever goes on day to day is where the emotional life, and I dare say the spiritual life of our kids, develop for good or for bad, depending on what is going on in that style and to the level that we have this awareness, this emotional intelligence. So we're going to take a look at that. When it comes to unpacking the research on emotional intelligence, we're just going to hit the tip of the iceberg, but I think even that will provide a really good foundation. A guy named Daniel Goleman, in a famous groundbreaking work called Emotional Intelligence, really brought that into more public view and understanding the importance of how the awareness of emotions impacts all our relationships. Then a guy named Dr. John Gottman, ring a bell? Many of us who've been part of our 8 Dates series, based on his book 8 Dates, that was written by Dr. John Gottman. When he wrote a parenting book, I was all over it because I knew he does such good research. A lot of our data that we're going to be sharing with you is from his book, Raising an Emotionally Intelligent Child. And so we're going to look at that as research. And then also, foundationally, even deeper than that, then we look to the scriptures, we look at the life of Jesus, the teaching of Jesus. And as you know, if you're reading your Bible lately, you'll notice, what do you notice in that New Testament? You notice the red letters. What are the red letters in our New Testament? It's the words of Christ. And that will absolutely be a foundation for us as we think about this idea of parenting from the heart and parenting with emotional intelligence, and even looking at what style we show up with. There's many places in Scripture that give us all kinds of insight. One I'll share with you from Matthew chapter 11, and it's a familiar one where it says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." So foundationally, as we're really thinking about our own parenting style and our own level of emotional intelligence, we might say from the scriptures that how we show up to parenting is meant to be a place that knows how to detect the burdens of our children, the stresses of our children, know what goes on, knowing that half of those stresses come out in behavior. We look beyond the behavior, understand what's going on in their heart, as we looked in the last segment with the red wire, blue wire, and that we would be able to be a place, that your home, a Christ-centered home, would be that place where their emotional experience is a place where they find rest for their souls, for their bodies, for their hearts, and for their minds. And so this is our foundation as we think about emotional intelligence. So in a moment, we're going to take a look at all the styles, and so we could reflect for ourselves where we land in all of this. But I want just from the start here to establish a basic definition of this idea of emotional intelligence. So as we look at the scriptures, we get a sense of that Christ-centered style, that Jesus style, if you will, that we reflected on earlier. But the research would summarize it this way: emotional intelligence for our families, for parents who are aware of their child's feelings, their emotions, the inner life of their child, awareness of your child's inner life. The emotionally intelligent parent would be able to empathize, extend compassion, knowing how to emotionally soothe our child, how to emotionally guide our child. Emotional intelligence in our kids, now keep in mind, the majority of their emotional intelligence is what they learn from us in the years of raising them. Their EQ would include ability to control their impulses, delay gratification, the ability to motivate themselves, and the emotionally intelligent child is able to read kind of the social cues of other people, even to the extent then of the ability to extend empathy, compassion to the feelings of others. And the emotionally intelligent child has the ability to cope with life's ups and downs. So Dr. John Gottman summarizes his research this way. He says, "Our results tell a simple yet compelling story. We have found that most parents fall into one of two broad categories." Oops, stop there. When I saw that, I got a little anxious, like, oh no, what category am I in? And is that good or bad? And in fact, when I first read it, I literally thought of the scripture in Matthew 25 when Jesus is talking about the end of time and he's going to separate all the people from the sheep from the goats. And I thought, oh, help me not be a goat parent here. How do I get among the sheep? What are these two broad categories? So it got me kind of paranoid, like, oh, this is important research. All of it says that most parents fall into one of two broad categories. What are those categories? He goes on to say, those who give their children guidance about the world of emotion and those who don't. So with that said, let's unpack all the various parenting styles. Let's do it.
Victoria Pavlatos, and I'm going to be going over the dismissive parenting characteristics. Dismissive parenting is defined as the following: a parent that consciously or unconsciously belittles or invalidates their child's negative feelings or emotions by ignoring them, denying them, or minimalizing those feelings. Often these parents are quick to try to get rid of those emotions, whether they're too uncomfortable, they don't want to deal with it. And this has become a very widespread parenting practice. We all fall guilty of being a dismissive parent. There's no shortage of examples. You could just go to any park today and see dismissive parenting at its finest, when you see moms and dads on their phones, not even paying attention to their kids. And this looks different from the time they're young to when they're in their teens. It can be, young at the playground and them getting hurt or getting in an argument with another young child. And it's like, you're fine, go, wipe it off. I don't want to hear anymore. Just go. With the teens, they come home with a breakup and they're heartbroken, and it's like, oh, really, you're 12, you're 15, you'll be fine, there'll be someone else, and never really giving them an opportunity to feel those feelings. And what happens over time is those children can learn that what those feelings, those deep, heavy things, that they're not valid, or that there's something inherently wrong with them for feeling them, since they're dismissed all the time. And again, we're talking about an habitual pattern. Nowadays, with parents that are so overworked, so overstimulated, burnt out, and numbing out, whether they're on their phones all the time, which leaves little room and space for those child's emotions, especially when they come home with negative ones. When we continually dismiss our child's negative emotions or just emotions in general, we're teaching them to really start suppressing things. It can also teach them that what they're feeling isn't okay or acceptable, and that turns into bigger mental health issues down the road. It also can inhibit their ability to connect and be empathetic with others in the world around them. When some of those big emotions we just don't know how to handle and cope with as some of these bigger things are coming up with our children, whether relationships, sexuality, drugs, and alcohol. And so sometimes we're quick to dismiss those because we don't know how to handle them. Sometimes it's something simple because we don't want to look bad as a parent. Other times we're in denial. Sometimes we don't know how to deal with it. And it can really do long-term harm to our children's emotional well-being, resulting in pent-up anger, resulting in children not knowing how to properly regulate really hard emotions. And those things play themselves out in mental health, behavioral issues in school, ability to be empathetic and be in emotional, healthy relationships with the world around them. And instead of being so fearful of some of those big things and emotions and negativity, if we can really see it as an opportunity to intimately connect with our kids, and it really opens the door for teaching moments. Sometimes we just need to be there to listen. Sometimes they just need to hear us, say, I'm here with you. I'm listening. I don't know what to say, but I'm right here with you. It teaches those kids how to properly express those negative emotions so that when they go out in the world, they can be empathetic, resilient individuals.
I'm Father Tom Sagalakis, and I'll be talking to you about the times when we get into the position of being a disapproving parent. It doesn't feel good. And when we become disapproving parents, we start judging and criticizing our kids' behavior and emotions. Sometimes we might say, Johnny, why are you jumping on the couch all the time? And you're always crying and you're whining, and why can't you do things right? Again, we're criticizing and judging. Not good. Be careful when you get into that rhythm. Sometimes we're quick to set limits. I told you not to do that. You're always doing that. Stop it right now. And then that kind of behavior kind of startles the kids sometimes, and we're not sure what to do when they get startled. We emphasize conformity to good standards of behavior. You know the feeling when your kid is not meeting up with the standards of other kids you know of. I call it the OCD, obsessive comparison disorder. We start judging our kids. I had that when I was a kid. Thanasi, Tommy, why aren't you like Johnny Steiber? He's the model kid. He's sweet. He's nice. He's smart. Be careful when you do that. Again, obsessive comparison disorder, when we try to emphasize conformity to good standards and behavior. Sometimes we believe negative behavior needs to be controlled. Sometimes it involves being physical or yelling. And when the child gets older, that's going to be a challenge because one day your kid's going to be bigger than you. So let's find a way to respond to that. Rules without relationship leads to rebellion. We need to have a relationship with our kids so when they get angry or frustrated, we don't need to use judgments or criticisms. Sometimes we feel like the kids use their emotions so they can control us or manipulate us. And you hear that, right? Oh, Tommy is looking for attention. For the most part, I think we really want connection. And that's sometimes when we feel the kids are giving bad behavior, they want our connection. So pay attention how you're loving your kids, how you're connecting and building those relationships. And then you don't have to be disapproving. You'll be loving and encouraging.
Helicopter parenting. Many of us might fall into this category of helicopter parenting. A helicopter parent feels and carries the pain of our child, sees rescue of our child as the central task of parenting. Often, a helicopter parent transfers unresolved issues onto our child. Helicopter parents are unclear where our own boundaries end and where the boundaries of our child begins. We fear failure and disappointment for our child. Helicopter parents are good at rescuing. When that lunch is forgotten on the kitchen counter, it's off to school we go to make sure that our son and daughter has our lunch that we've lovingly prepared. We rush to examine homework and ensure that it's right. We hover over college applications and essays. Helicopter parents might even control their kids' friendships, often stepping out to resolve conflicts or even dictate who their children can or cannot spend time with. Helicopter parents can be very overprotective, constantly worried for their child's safety, even in a safe environment. We all want to keep our children safe and happy, but at the same time, children need space to learn and grow. And when you meddle too much, it can backfire. Children of over-controlling parents may be less able to deal with challenges of growing up. Over-controlling leads to a child's inability to manage emotions and behavior. Also, when you hover over your child, you send the message that you think that they're incapable of doing it themselves and that you don't trust them to do it on their own. This leads to lack of self-confidence, and your child may feel that she is not able to make right decisions unless you as a parent are involved. And this amplifies anxiety and stress as they grow. So let's do everything in our power to sit back and reflect. Are we a helicopter parent?
What's a helicopter parent?
They're always watching their kids. They're always checking your homework and they're making sure you're doing it right.
They're always making sure I'm okay, but it bothers me.
They're always getting to my business. And they're always watching every move I make.
They might not trust that I'm on my own, but I can. I can do it on my own.
They're always asking, where am I going?
And they don't want to see me fail.
What if you fail?
I'll handle it.
But my parents aren't like that. Well, maybe sometimes.
Hello, I'm Presbytera Michelle, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about laissez-faire parenting, otherwise known as permissive parenting, which is when parents have few family rules or boundaries for their kids as they grow up. Laissez-faire is a French term that literally means allow to do. It's the idea that you let people do as they choose, and in other words, it's hands off, anything goes. So how does that apply to parenting? So laissez-faire parenting is a style which is characterized by placing low demands on a child while also offering a high degree of responsiveness in return. So if you're a laissez-faire parent, you might set very few family rules, guidelines, or boundaries for your child. However, you also provide a very loving and nurturing home because you're somebody who allows their child to freely do as they wish, to express as they wish. They know that they feel very safe with you. So let's take a look at the characteristics of laissez-faire parenting. A laissez-faire parent freely accepts emotional expression from the child. So your child comes to you, they're in emotional distress, something happened at school, they're really feeling their feelings. You let them really get all of those big emotions and those big feelings out. You offer little guidance to your child, so you're not going to be solving their problems for them. You're not going to be telling them what their next steps are. You're going to let them figure it out. This is on them. You're permissive. You don't set limits. So for you, you're not following maybe a strict bedtime. You may not have a strict morning or nighttime routine. And And finally, you don't problem solve. You're kind of conflict avoidant. So if your child comes and expresses something that happened at school that day, you're not going to be giving them advice for when they are in that situation again. You may ask the child, well, what did you do? How did you solve it? And what will you be doing next time? And leave it up to the child to figure out. There's minimal conflict between child and parent. Well, sure, if you're not telling your child what to do, you're not going to have a lot of conflict. And parents who are laissez-faire parents tend to be very conflict avoidant. Okay, what are some of the cons of this type of parenting style? So some of the cons could include some power struggles between child and parent. If you develop certain habits where you always allow your child to figure things out, and then perhaps one day you decide you need to lay down the law a little bit, that may not go over so well. There can be clashes between the wants and needs of a child, or clashes between the wants and needs of a child and their siblings. Lack of motivation, especially as the child grows older. They may not feel a lot incentivized because they've always been allowed to sort of direct themselves. There could be a lack of the child's self-discipline, blurring of child and parent relationship, because again, you have brought your child in, you haven't set firm boundaries, so they will learn those negotiation skills, and that can definitely blur the line between parent and child. And then sometimes a laissez-faire parenting style can lead to poor self-control in kids. Again, if they never have to check themselves at home, they may not learn to check themselves in other situations as well. Good to keep in mind how this parenting style works, and the pros and cons as you move forward.
So as we've had opportunity to unpack these different styles that kind of come easy to us, and depending on the emotional classroom we grew up in, sometimes we feel like that style's almost been inherited. Some of us might even keep that in mind and go to the extreme opposite, and sometimes that ends up being a well-intentioned style, but not useful either. So as we consider all these things, we want to land on what we'd call, and what the research calls, the emotion coach. That's the style parenting we want to consider, and one that helps cultivate high emotional intelligence in us, in our household, and in the emotional development of our children. So we've taken kind of that tour through the dismissing parent, the disapproving parent, the helicopter parent, the laissez-faire parent. Now we'll let go of that, and with God all things are possible, and we move toward perhaps this calling in the Christ-centered home to be the emotion coach. So we'll take a peek at what the research says about the emotion coach. The emotion coach values the child's negative emotions as an opportunity for intimacy. Now, pause there. That will save our marriages, by the way. Very often when the negative emotion comes up in our spouse, we only regard that as conflict or a fight or no good outcome. Negative emotions actually gives us opportunity for closeness and intimacy. The emotion coach can tolerate spending time with a sad, angry, or fearful child. Does not become impatient with those negative emotions. The emotion coach is aware and values his or her own emotions. We can't have high emotional intelligence in our household if we're emotionally blocked. And so the idea that we value our own emotions, we keep track of our own emotions, we're in tune with our own emotions. The emotion coach is sensitive to the child's emotional states, varies from child to child and at different ages. And these emotional states can be subtle. The emotion coach is not confused or anxious about the child's emotional expression. We start developing a sense of knowing what needs to be done as we read these emotions. The emotion coach respects the child's emotions, The emotion coach does not poke fun at or make light of the child's emotions, particularly their negative feelings and emotions. And the emotion coach does not say how the child should feel, but connects with the experience of the child. Does not feel he or she has to fix the problem for the child. And this is a good little mini summary, the emotion coach uses emotional moments as a time to listen to the child, empathize with soothing words and affection, help the child label the emotion he or she is feeling, offer guidance on regulating emotions, set limits and teach acceptable expression of emotions, and teach problem-solving skills. What the research indicates is the effects on the child from the household that has the emotion coach. They learn to trust their own feelings in order to then go on into their lives in regulating those same feelings and emotions. They have a higher self-esteem, sense of who they are, and they learn to get along well with others and in tune with the experience of others. So we see this very powerful relationship between how we show up emotionally in our emotional intelligence and ultimately what develops in our child. As we already mentioned, our ability to have high enough EQ to label that emotion, use words so they could understand, even though they're aware that they're feeling angry, we give them a label that might actually be under the anger, like, sounds like you're disappointed. So then as they develop, they're feeling that anger, but they get the EQ to say, yes, of course I feel angry, but wow, it's coming from my disappointment. And ultimately, they'll be able to communicate that EQ to use words like, I'm really feeling disappointed. Our ability to soothe them during difficult and kind of volatile times gives them then, because in that emotional classroom, we're using this curriculum, if you will, then they'll have the ability to self-soothe. The empathy we show them gives them not only the empathy they could have on their own difficulty, but ultimately, and thank God, to extend empathy to the difficulties of people around them. So we consider that this emotion coach, the one who, as the scriptures call it, comes alongside, that is the style, come alongside, offering love and support. Reactiveness is not part of the life of the emotion coach. And we think about the kinds of tools that we have being an emotion coach. We have the beautiful traditions of our prayer life. And the whole purpose of prayer is to go from here to here, to go from reacting to responding, to go from shutting something down to opening something up. Parenting from the heart.
Real life parenting from the heart. Real life parenting from the heart.